40 years. I hadn't seen Michael Torres since graduation night in 1984. He disappeared that summer. No goodbye, no explanation, no forwarding address. I married someone else, built a life, raised kids. But I never forgot him. Last Saturday at our 40th high school reunion in Phoenix, I walked into the hotel ballroom and there he was. Older, grayer, but unmistakably him. When our eyes met across the room, I knew I needed to know. Why did he leave? The answer would change everything I thought I knew about that summer, about us, about my entire life. Please subscribe to the channel and leave a comment if you want to hear how a chance reunion can rewrite 40 years of memories. My name is Sarah Mitchell, and I'm 60 years old now, living in a quiet suburb outside Phoenix, Arizona. Back in 1984, I was Sarah Collins, an 18-year-old girl in love with a boy named Michael Torres. We'd been dating throughout our senior year, chemistry lab partners who became inseparable by Christmas. Michael was brilliant, kind, with dark eyes that crinkled when he laughed. His family had moved to our town from New Mexico when we were juniors. We had plans, both accepted to Arizona State, planning to study together, dreaming about a future that seemed so certain. Then came that summer after graduation. One day, Michael was there, promising to take me to see Purple Rain that weekend. The next, he was gone. His family's house emptied overnight. No forwarding address, no goodbye note, no phone calls. His number disconnected. I drove by his house for weeks, finding only a for sale sign and curtainless windows. I wrote letters that came back marked, "Return to sender." None of our classmates knew anything, or if they did, they weren't telling me. The Torres family had simply vanished, taking my heart with them. I stayed in Arizona, changed my college plans to Northern Arizona University. It took me 5 years to stop looking for him in crowds. By the time I was 26, I'd met David Mitchell, a kind engineer who loved me patiently, even on days when I was distant, thinking about what might have been. We married when I was 28, had 2 wonderful children, Jennifer and Ryan, now grown with families of their own. David gave me 30 wonderful years before cancer took him 5 years ago. My life has been good, meaningful. I built a career as a high school counselor, helping other young people navigate their futures. I have grandchildren who fill my days with joy, but there was always that question mark, that what if that would creep into my thoughts on quiet nights. Why did Michael leave? What happened that summer? Did I mean anything to him at all? I almost didn't go to the reunion. 4 decades is a long time. Most of those people were strangers to me now, connected only by yearbook photos and shared geography. Michael had never attended any of our previous reunions, 10 years, 20, 30. Why would the 40th be any different? But something, nostalgia, curiosity, or maybe just the desire to see old friends, made me RSVP yes, and buy a new dress for the occasion. The moment I walked into that hotel ballroom in downtown Phoenix, I felt 17 again. The committee had gone all out with the 80s theme, posters of Michael Jackson and Madonna on the walls, Duran Duran playing through the speakers, name tags with our senior photos beside our current names, gray-haired strangers who gradually became recognizable as the teenagers I once knew. I was chatting with my old friend Debbie, catching up on 40 years of life in the span of minutes, when I felt a change in the air. A presence. I turned, and there he was, across the room. Michael Torres. 60 years old now, with salt and pepper hair and glasses. Taller than I remembered. More solid, but with the same way of standing, slightly leaned back, one hand in his pocket. And when he smiled at something someone said, I saw the 18-year-old boy I'd loved. Our eyes met across the ballroom, and time collapsed. 40 years disappeared in an instant. He recognized me immediately. I could see it in the way he straightened, the way his conversation stopped mid-sentence. We stared at each other across a sea of former classmates, neither moving at first. Then he began walking toward me, weaving through groups of people who had once shared lockers and lunch tables and geometry classes with us. 40 years of questions rose in my throat. "Sarah," he said when he reached me, his voice deeper than I remembered, but with the same slight accent, the same way of saying my name that had always made my heart skip. "Michael, I didn't expect to see you here." My voice sounded strange to my own ears. "Been a long time," he said, eyes never leaving mine. 40 years, I answered. The weight of those decades hung between us. We stood awkwardly, two strangers who once knew each other's every thought. Small talk seemed absurd, but necessary. "You still live in Arizona?" he asked. "Yes, Scottsdale now. You?" "California, San Diego." "It's nice there." "It is." Each sentence was weighted with unspoken questions. I learned he was an architect, that he had 2 grown daughters, that he'd been divorced for 15 years, that he'd come to the reunion alone. I told him about my life, counseling career, 2 kids, 5 grandchildren, about David and his passing. Other classmates interrupted us occasionally, with exaggerated double takes and comments like, "Oh my God, Sarah and Michael, remember how you two were inseparable?" Each interruption heightened the tension, the unasked questions. Finally, during a pause in conversation, while the DJ played Cyndi Lauper's Time After Time, Michael looked at me directly. "Can we talk? Somewhere private?" He glanced around at the crowded ballroom. "I owe you an explanation. It's 40 years overdue." My heart hammered in my chest. "Yes," I said, surprising myself with how steady my voice sounded. "I'd like that." He led the way through French doors to the hotel's garden terrace. The Arizona night was warm, the air fragrant with desert flowers. Music from the ballroom drifted out, muted now. Stars spread across the sky, the same stars that had watched us as teenagers. We found a quiet bench away from the few other reunion goers who had stepped outside for air. The garden lights cast soft shadows on Michael's face, accentuating the lines time had carved there. We sat in silence for a long moment. Finally, I asked the question I'd held for 40 years. "Why did you leave?" The words came out softer than I intended, but charged with decades of wondering. "Not just leave town. You vanished." I called. I wrote. "Nothing. Your family wouldn't tell me anything." I could hear 40 years of hurt in my own voice. Michael looked down at his hands. They were different now. A man's hands, with a thin gold wedding band still on his right hand instead of his left. He took a deep breath. "I didn't want to go," he said finally, looking up at the stars rather than at me. "I was forced to. By my family, by circumstances. I was 17 and powerless." He paused, collecting thoughts, ordering 40-year-old memories. That summer, 1984, my father got a call from his brother in California. A job opportunity in his construction business. Better money than he was making in Arizona. Michael's voice took on a bitter edge. But that wasn't the real reason we left. I waited, heart pounding. "My family never approved of you, Sarah." He turned to face me then. "Not you personally. They thought you were a nice girl, but they didn't approve of us together." "Because I wasn't Catholic," I said, the pieces suddenly clicking into place. "Because my family was Protestant." He nodded. "My father's family came from a small village in Mexico. Very traditional, very religious. When they realized how serious we were getting, college plans together, talking about a future, they gave me an ultimatum." I felt cold despite the warm night. They told me I had to break it off with you, or they would cut me off completely. No college money, no home, nothing. He shook his head. I was 17. I had no money of my own, no way to support myself through school. And when my uncle called with the job offer, my father saw it as divine intervention, a chance to get me away from you. So they forced you to leave without saying goodbye? My voice caught. Without even a note? They gave me no choice. We moved in the middle of the night. I wasn't allowed to contact you. My father checked the mail, monitored phone calls. I was told if I reached out to you, they would know, and I'd be on the street. He rubbed his face, the memory clearly painful. I was a minor, completely dependent on them. And terrified. You could have found a way, I said, old anger bubbling up. Left a message with a friend, something. I did try, he said quietly. I wrote you a letter explaining everything. Gave it to Tommy Rodriguez to deliver to you. Tommy Rodriguez, a mutual friend who'd moved away himself before senior year ended. I never got any letter, I said. I found out years later that Tommy's family moved to Colorado before he could deliver it. By then, he trailed off. By then, I figured you had moved on. Hated me, probably. We sat in silence for a moment, absorbing the weight of his revelation. The music from inside changed to Madonna's Crazy for You, the song that had been playing during our first kiss. What about after? I asked. You turned 18, went to college. You were free then. Michael's expression twisted with regret. By then, I was at UC San Diego, full scholarship my parents had arranged. He hesitated, angry, at them, at God, at the whole situation. I threw myself into my studies. Then when I was 20, I met Elaine. Your wife? Ex-wife now. But yes, Catholic girl. Family approved, he gave a mirthless laugh. I was still trying to be the good son. We married at 22, had our daughters, built a life. He looked at me directly. But I never forgot you, Sarah. Never stopped wondering. I felt tears prickling behind my eyes. You chose your family over me. I was 17, he repeated, his voice breaking slightly. I made the wrong choice. I've regretted it for 40 years. The enormity of what we'd lost sat between us. 40 years of might-have-beens. Did you ever... He hesitated. Did you ever look for me? After? For years, I admitted. But Torres is a common name, and I had no idea where you'd gone. Eventually I met David. I searched for the right words. He was good to me, for me. We had a good life. I'm glad, Michael said, and I could tell he meant it. I saw your wedding announcement in the Arizona Republic. My mother still got the paper. I saw the birth announcements for your children, too. The thought of him seeing those glimpses of my life while I knew nothing of his was jarring. I looked you up online, he confessed. Over the years, saw pictures of your kids graduating, you at school events. Your husband. He hesitated. I was sorry to hear of his passing. Were you happy? I asked. With Elaine? For a while, he said. We wanted different things eventually. She's remarried now. Happier. And you? I have my work. My daughters. Friends. He shrugged. It's a good life. But there's always been this... He gestured between us. This unfinished chapter. I understood exactly what he meant. The what-ifs. The road not taken. Why come to the reunion now? I asked. After skipping all the others? 40 years felt significant, he said. I've been thinking a lot about regrets, things left unsaid. He met my eyes. I wanted to apologize, to explain. I didn't expect forgiveness, just closure, I supplied. Yes, for both of us, maybe. I looked at this man, the boy I'd loved, transformed by 4 decades of life I knew nothing about. I felt anger, yes, sadness for what we'd lost, but also understanding. We had been so young. I wish you'd fought harder, I said finally. I wish you'd found a way to tell me. So do I, he said simply. Every day for 40 years. We sat in silence again, but it was different now, less tense. 4 decades of questions finally answered. Should we go back inside? He asked eventually, gesturing toward the ballroom where Journey was now playing. I nodded and we rose together, walking side by side back to the reunion. The rest of the evening felt surreal. We drifted in and out of each other's orbits, sometimes talking together, sometimes mingling separately with old classmates. But there was a connection now, an awareness. Occasionally our eyes would meet across the room, and 40 years would vanish again. As the night wound down, we found ourselves together again, looking through yearbooks the committee had placed on display tables. "Look at us," I said, pointing to a photo of the chemistry lab. We stood side by side at a lab table, both wearing safety goggles, my hair permed in the fashion of the day, his in the feathered style that had made girls swoon. We were babies, with our whole lives ahead of us, he said quietly. Different lives than we imagined. Yes. The DJ announced the last song, Forever Young by Alphaville, and people drifted to the dance floor for a final moment of nostalgia. "Dance with me?" Michael asked, extending his hand. I hesitated only briefly before taking it. His hand felt both familiar and foreign as he led me to the dance floor. We kept a respectful distance as we swayed to the music, but I could feel the echo of the teenagers we'd been, dancing at prom to this same song. When the music ended, the spell broke. People began saying goodbyes, exchanging contact information, promising to stay in touch, though most knew they wouldn't. Michael and I walked together to the parking lot, our steps slowing as we approached my car. "So," he said, stopping beside it. "So," I echoed. We stood awkwardly in the warm night, 40 years of history and a single evening of revelations between us. "I'm in town until Tuesday," he said finally, "staying at the Sheraton downtown." I nodded, unsure what to say. "Would you—" He hesitated. "Would you like to get coffee tomorrow? Continue catching up?" His voice was careful, neutral. "Just as friends," he added quickly. I don't expect—" "Coffee would be nice," I said, surprising myself. "There's a good place near the botanical garden. We could walk there after if you'd like." Relief washed over his face. "I'd like that very much." We exchanged phone numbers, something that would have seemed miraculous to our teenage selves, these small devices connecting us instantly when once he'd been completely unreachable. "I really am sorry, Sarah," he said as I unlocked my car. "For everything." "I know," I said. "And I did. I'll see you tomorrow, Michael." He closed my car door for me, and I watched him in the rearview mirror as I drove away, standing in the hotel parking lot, watching me leave, as if afraid I might disappear this time. The next morning, as I prepared to meet Michael for coffee, I found myself staring at my reflection in the mirror. Silver hair where chestnut had been. Lines around my eyes and mouth. 60, not 17. I wasn't sure what I was looking for. The girl I'd been, perhaps. My daughter Jennifer called as I was getting ready to leave. "How was the reunion, Mom? As terrible as you expected?" I hesitated, unsure how to condense the previous night into a casual phone conversation. "It was surprising," I said finally. "I ran into Michael Torres." Silence on the other end of the line. Jennifer knew the story, the high school boyfriend who vanished, who I'd occasionally mentioned over the years when reminiscing. "Michael Torres, the one who disappeared? He was there?" "Yes, we talked. He explained why he left." Another pause. "And why did he?" I gave her the condensed version. Religious differences, family pressure, no choice at 17. "Are you okay, Mom?" Jennifer's voice was concerned. "That's a lot to process after all these years." "I'm fine," I assured her. "Actually, I'm meeting him for coffee this morning." "Seriously?" She sounded alarmed. "Are you sure that's a good idea, after he hurt you like that?" "We were teenagers, Jen. It's been 40 years. I surprised myself with my own calm. "We're just catching up. As friends, if you say so, just be careful with your heart, Mom. You've been through enough." After we hung up, I thought about her warning. Was I being naive, reopening old wounds? But as I drove to meet Michael, I realized I felt lighter than I had in years. Knowing the truth, even a painful truth, was better than 40 years of wondering. We spent the morning talking over coffee, then walking through the botanical garden, in the daylight, away from the heightened emotions of the reunion. We got to know each other as we were now, not as we'd been then. I learned about his passion for sustainable architecture, his pride in his daughters, one a doctor, one a teacher. He heard about my counseling work, my grandchildren, my volunteer activities since David's death. "You've built a good life," he said as we sat on a bench, watching hummingbirds dart among the desert blooms. "So have you," I replied. "Different than we planned, but good." "Do you ever wonder, though?" he asked quietly. "What might have happened if you'd stayed? If we'd gone to ASU together?" I considered the question. "Sometimes. But that would mean not having my children, my grandchildren, not having the life I built with David, and I wouldn't trade them for anything." He nodded. "I feel the same way about my girls. I just wish we could have found out on our own terms, made our own choices." "We did make choices," I said gently. "Even hard ones, even with limited options. You chose your family, your future. I chose to move forward, to love again." "Wiser at 60 than at 17, he said with a small smile. "God, I hope so." We laughed together, and it felt good. Healing. Before he left to catch his flight the next day, we had dinner at a quiet restaurant downtown. No dancing this time, no reopening of old wounds. Just two people connected by history, enjoying each other's company. "Will you keep in touch?" I asked as we said goodbye outside the restaurant. "I'd like to," he said, "if that's something you want too." I considered the question seriously. Did I want Michael Torres back in my life after 40 years? Not as the boy I'd loved, but as the man he'd become. "I think I would," I said finally. Not to rewrite the past, but perhaps to have a better ending than the one we got. "I'd like that too," he said, and the relief in his voice was palpable. We embraced briefly, a chaste hug between old friends. No romantic spark, no dramatic declarations, just acknowledgement of a shared past, and perhaps a small place in each other's futures. In the weeks since the reunion, Michael and I have exchanged occasional emails and phone calls. Nothing daily, nothing intense, just checking in, sharing bits of our separate lives. He sent pictures of his daughter's new baby, making him a grandfather. I told him about my book club's latest selection and my plans to visit Jennifer in Colorado next month. It's strange how knowing the truth has changed my perception of the past. The boy who abandoned me has been replaced in my memory by a 17-year-old as trapped by circumstances as I was by his disappearance. The what-if that haunted me has transformed into an understanding that different paths led where they needed to. Sometimes I look at the photo from our reunion, gray-haired Michael and silver-haired me, standing by the display table of yearbooks, smiling cautiously at the camera. Beside it on my mantel is a photo from 1984, Michael and me at prom, young and oblivious to the summer that would tear us apart. 40 years between those images. Lifetimes of joy and sorrow and mundane days. Children born, raised, launched into their own lives. Careers built, a marriage that lasted 30 years. A divorce that ended another. Homes made and left. Parents buried. Grandchildren welcomed. First love doesn't die. It just waits. Not to be rekindled necessarily, but to be acknowledged. To be understood in the context of the people we've become, not just the teenagers we were. Would I have wanted to know why Michael left, back when I was 18 and heartbroken? Absolutely. Would it have changed anything? Probably not. His family would still have moved. We would still have been separated, but perhaps the knowing would have allowed me to move forward, without the weight of uncertainty, without the years of wondering if I'd somehow been unworthy of even a goodbye. Closure came 40 years too late, but it came, and with it, an unexpected friendship with a man who once knew me better than anyone, who now knows me hardly at all, but who shares the unique connection of having once been the center of my world, as I was his. When we were 17, we thought love conquers all. At 60, we know better. Love matters immensely, but so do circumstances, timing, family ties, practical realities. The boy who couldn't defy his family for me became a man who raised daughters to make their own choices. The girl who wondered why for decades became a woman who helped hundreds of teenagers navigate their own crossroads. Perhaps that's the best we can hope for. Not that first love lasts forever, but that it shapes us in ways that make us more compassionate, more understanding, more fully ourselves. We were 17 once. Now we're 60. The road from there to here wasn't what either of us imagined on graduation night in 1984. but it led us exactly where we needed to be. Have you ever wondered about your first love? Would you want to know why they left, even 40 years later? Leave your comment below. Subscribe for more emotional reunion stories. Share if you believe everyone deserves closure.